In one of the previous talks, Buddha versus Theravada, I was focusing on the first centuries after Buddha's parinibbana, at the quite dynamic development of ideas, what was happening, because the authority was no more there. The groups of monks getting different interpretations of certain elements of the teaching, it started to divide. The teaching was really branching out into 18 schools. The number 18 is just a symbolic number, because soon after a school formed, quite soon after that, again, some monks took different position on some element, and again, branching, dividing. So, if I go back to my very beginning, when I encountered Buddha's teaching for the first time, I was so deeply impressed by the unusual solution which Buddha is presenting, the radicality of his solution, just free yourself from the 5 khandhas, which 5 khandhas, of course, mind and body. So that was really unusually radical. The first thought which parallelly appeared in my mind, as I know the humanity as it works, trying to round up the edges and bring some new appealing, easier digestible elements into it. So in the night of the first encounter with Buddha teaching, I decided for myself to stick only with the original and ignore all the things which came later, because in my mind at that time was, anything which can come to that will water it down. So this was the first 20 years. Later, because I am now almost 50 years with the Buddha's teaching, recognizing that what at that time I regarded as the original, that the Theravada actually was already one of the 18 schools. The old Theravada, the teaching of the elders, would be the translation. They were witnessing this development and being worried what can happen with the teaching. They took basically a conservative stand, not following all these new developments of idea and so. But even in the Theravada, there is a noticeable shift of emphasis towards insight. The whole newly emerging, newly created Abhidhamma is about vipassana, insight mainly. And let's be clear, the reason is understandable, because the insight is triggering the enlightenment. So, development of emphasis and also development in methodic, how to cultivate the insight. Buddha uses contemplation and wise reflection, thinking, preparing the mind for the insight to happen. So there is lots of emphasis. I was now looking explicitly in the Samyutta Nikaya about how Bhikkhu Bodhi translates the Pali, very often using to understand that the 5 khandhas, the form, the feeling, the perception, formation, consciousness, is not mind, is not me, is not myself, but these are rather to understand, which is still a thinking process. Buddha is using a lot wise reflecting for the cultivation of insight, so that the insight may happen. But the Theravadian direction is more to go directly, silently into the human experience itself, to see the events in the mind happen, because these are clearly arising and passing away. Buddha is actually using rather the term to see the origination of form and the passing away of form. The origination of feeling, the passing away of feeling. You know, in the Buddha's original, there is a more general getting the sense of conditioning, very, very important. In the Theravada, the development goes into seeing the mind moments. That came later, actually, in the later centuries. And so the normal human life experience is suddenly discovered to be a composition of quickly arising and passing away mental events. You know, and these events are real, even in the ultimate sense. That's what they are presenting to the mind, the contents of that. That's the interpretation and creation and all that. But that they are taking place, this is the new reality where the anicca, dukkha, anatta is appearing very, very clearly. Now, remembering my intuitive inclination in my meditation to leave all the thinking out, that was my conviction, that my meditation needs to be conceptually silent, just intuitively open to the truth. So, in fact, when I look back now, I was quite lucky that I encountered Theravada. The books I could encounter 50 years ago, these were books already Theravada influenced, which was actually my good luck. So in my personal understanding, not all the further developments or additions to original teaching were counterproductive. And actually, today I have no problem even with Mahayana. The only thing I am somehow criticizing is the element that this new sutra in Sanskrit, newly composed sutra, were put into Buddha's mouth. That should not be the way to deal with the original. Using the authority of the Buddha for kind of additional development. So what I wanted to focus in this talk, this distinction where in the suttas the Buddha is using the worldly conventional language, and those elements in his presentation when he speaks from the position of the highest insight. So, because this is quite a sensitive topic, I will read it. The paper title is Different Levels of Buddha's Teaching, and then with small letters, Different Intensities of Reality. It goes like this. From the normal human perspective, it is very difficult to grasp or conceive the breathtaking depth of Buddha's insight, the extent and intensity of his enlightenment, the unexpected, mind-boggling kinds of his awakening. His achievement and realizations are far, far beyond any description. It was a truly masterful accomplishment of the Buddha to formulate a teaching, to put it into words something that principally lies beyond language and concepts, and to teach a comprehensible, largely coherent path toward liberation. For Buddha, the human world and the reality of living are something very different from that how we perceive it. Buddha sees the human world in inconceivably larger context. In order to make himself understandable, the Buddha had to bend down to the people's limitations and formulate many aspects of Dhamma from the human, worldly perspective. But when he felt that the audience was ready, he returned to his full insight knowledge and expounded the elements of Dhamma in their full intensity, calling them by their true names. In the oldest collections of the Pali Canon, there is one sutta. It is the Majjhima Nikaya 117, the Mahachatari Sakasutta, where 5 links which otherwise form the first part of the Eightfold Noble Path, that is the view, intention, speech, action and livelihood. This is the beginning of the Eightfold Noble Path. Now, it is presented here at 3 different levels. As wrong, as right worldly, and right supermundane. 3 different levels. This is quite a unique occurrence in the suttas. Bhikkhu Bodhi, because he translated all, even the Samyutta is translated by him, I guess. He is doubting the originality of this sutta because this division into mundane and supermundane is unique. And also the structure, the language of the Pali in this sutta, he is recognizing there some later kind of Abhidhammic way of putting the things. So it's possible that this sutta was a little bit modified, but it doesn't matter. Let's take it as it is. In this sutta, distinction is being made between Dhamma level related to the world, that's the Lokiya Dhamma. That means a level of Dhamma leading primarily to samsaric happiness, and the level of Dhamma that leads to Nibbana, Lokutara Dhamma. In most of the suttas, however, the Buddha let both levels of Dhamma to blend, support each other and cooperate. The advancement from worldly Dhamma to Nibbanic Dhamma happens in most of the suttas quite organically as a natural unfolding along the path of practice. This may be also the best way to approach and understand it as gradual development stages. But already in the oldest original accounts, there are records of discussions where the Buddha had to clarify some of the apparent logical conflicts between these 2 different levels in the teaching. And so it is until now. The 2 perspectives differ in many ways, and certain carefulness when reflecting or teaching Dhamma is necessary. Inappropriate, insensitive mixing of these different standpoints will result in confusion. From my experience, the most persistent, reappearing and far-reaching perplexities arise around the Pali term anatta, not self. The Buddha was very sensitive to the mental capacity of the audience. As a rule, he was attuning the level of his Dhamma exposition to the spiritual potential of the assembly, so that those present were not confused or overloaded with advanced teachings. This skill apparently was not so well inherited by the Buddha's later followers. Quite soon after Buddha's parinibbana, a distinct need arose to clearly distinguish the different levels of Dhamma in the suttas. In this way, the discernment between Samute and Paramatta got underway. for the sake of clarity. Samuti is Dhamma level that is close to the human worldly understanding. Example, Gracia, the moral rules, social behavior, wholesome actions, wholesome mental attitudes, etc. Paramata is the advanced Dhamma level oriented directly towards the ultimate reality, toward the spiritual insight and full realization of Nibbana. Here I put my kind of a thought. This originally healthy tendency to bring clarity into subtle areas of Dhamma took its own development, and relatively soon after Buddha's demise, an additional basket to the canonized text was added, the so-called Abhidhamma, an attempt to define and catalogue everything exclusively from the highest level of truth, pure Paramata. Some Dhamma followers see in Abhidhamma the culmination of Buddha's doctrine. Others avoid it or even dismiss it as a not original, too one-sided addition to the canon, which goes too far and astray. But beyond all that, let us be clear that Abhidhamma is the canonized third Pitaka, third basket of the Pali Canon. Now, as already stated, the edgy division of the teaching into Samuti and Paramata does not come from the Buddha himself. That should be clear. But the Paramata level is clearly and repeatedly represented in the suttas, in the oldest suttas, by all the teachings about five khandhas, teachings about anatta, the salayatana, these are the sensory basis and the mental base, 18 dhatus, visual object, visual organ, visual consciousness, times 6, make 18. Sunyata, Namarupa, all these teachings are actually Paramata. The Paticca Samuppada, dependent origination, also belongs to the Paramata teaching, Nibbana itself. The Pali expressions Samuti and Paramata do not appear in the oldest sutta, but they are frequently used in the later addition to the canon, such as Abhidhamma, the exegetical text, and later addition to Vinaya. The English renderings are showing the far-reaching difference between these two. Samuti Sacha and Paramata Sacha. Conventional relative truth and the ultimate or the highest truth. Another one, Samuti Desana, Paramata Desana. Dhamma teachings given from the worldly perspective and Dhamma teaching given from the perspective of supermundane insight. Or another one, Samuti Dhamma and Paramata Dhamma. Reality and the phenomena in the conventional worldly sense as it appears to people, and reality and phenomena as they really are. Now, here I put lots of further distinctions. I think I will drop that, going directly to some quotations from the suttas where Buddha speaks directly from the position of his highest insight. Now it comes. Sutta Nipata 5:16. Consider, Mogaraja, this world as empty. Become the death winner so. Whoever can look at the world like this is not spotted by the king of death. Here is one of the rare occurrences of the term sunyata, this universal emptiness. I can imagine that the Mahayana development in the importance of sunyata, everything empty, that it has the foundation in the oldest part of the canon. Sutta Nipata is regarded as one of the oldest in the whole canon. Another one, Samyutta Nikaya 35:28, Adita Pariyaya Sutta. That's the famous fire sermon. Everything, monks, is on fire. But what is on fire? The eye and the forms, the ear and the sounds, the nose and the sense, the tongue and the tastes, the body and the sensations, the mind and the thoughts are on fire. The sixfold consciousness, the sixfold contact, and what is caused by the contact, be it pleasant or unpleasant, or neither pleasant nor unpleasant, that too is on fire. This is the Buddha's viewing samsara as a whole. Everything is on fire. Therefore, his teaching is leading to the peace, to the nirvana, nibbana. Another very important Samyutta Nikaya 2295, the Pena Sutta, where Buddha is describing the 5 khandhas, composite phenomena of that what we are, mind and body. Materiality is like a glob of foam. Feeling is like a bubble. Perception is like a mirage. Mental formations are like a banana tree. Banana tree has no wood. Consciousness is like a magic trick. However you observe them, appropriately examine them, they are empty, void, to whoever sees them appropriately. Just a second kind of a support for the universal emptiness. Perhaps even one more, which I like the most. That's the Samyutta Nikaya 226, Rohitasa. It is just within this fathom-long body, with its perception and intellect, that I declare that there is the world. The world in this fathom-long body, the origination of the world, the cessation of the world, and the path of practice leading to the cessation of the world. This is the hard one, that the aim of Buddha's highest realization is to end up this world, in a way, which is the creation of the mind and body, to free oneself of these 5 khandhas, to be liberated. That's the hard one. Now, my quote here. Some of these quotations and terms convey the notion that in ultimate sense there is no outer objective solid material reality. At the Paramattha level there is only Nibbana and the conditioned impersonal phenomena and processes. This is the very advanced way, which can actually be experienced in very advanced insight meditation, that the world is created by the mind. And I was giving already many times this kind of example from the science, actually, relying on just on the science. Many things are already clear, that the sun is not radiating light or colors. Sun is radiating electromagnetic waves. They are colorless, they are lightless, but they are reflecting off the surface of some objects. the scientific physics of electromagnetic waves. And they are entering into our eye through the lens on the retina. The retina with these cones, they are excited by these electromagnetic waves, and they are creating electrochemical impulses through the nerves. No light, no colors at all. Through the nerves, these impulses are going to the visual center of the brain. The visual center is in the back of the skull. There is absolute and completely dark there, especially if you have black hair. It is there where out of these impulses are created shapes and form and colors and light. But it stays there. Then there is this consciousness, which I regard as something different from the mind which is created partially in the brain. But another part of the mind actually is that which can divorced from the brain and go its own way. That happens when the body dies. But during our life, this mind and consciousness is connected to the interface brain. So it is receiving these pictures and colors and light, and we see the world around us. But don't forget that this image of the surrounding is staying in the dark brain visual center, and the projection outwards. That's quite a strong one, this kind of reflection. How the world is in this fathom long body. Now even from the scientific point of view. So actually, in my contemporary understanding, the real reality, the last reality, is something like the information. It's true that Buddha did not define the last reality. The only quote which he gave about this ontological kind of understanding of the last reality, nothing exists is a one wrong attitude. Everything exists is another wrong attitude. So it is something in between. And this idea of a virtual reality, that we are living actually in virtual reality as humans, this is one of the possible understandings which would actually even fit quite well with the modern physics. Max Tegmark, the Swedish professor, now with the theory of multiverse, it's one of these superstars in the modern physics, bringing the idea that the last reality is only mathematics, these mathematical relations, which would fit quite well with Buddha's teaching, actually. There is something, but it is nothing like matter or energy or light or rays or radiation. No. You have to go much, much farther. There is the ultimate reality. The fluctuation of quantum fields, that was another kind of a possibility to understand the last level of reality. But anyway, all this has to go because that's all samsara. But now, continuing, few examples of the difference between samuti and paramattha from our everyday life. From the worldly perspective, there is yesterday, today, and tomorrow. On the paramattha level, everything happens only now. Because remembering actually is happening at now. Exactly planning is, if it is any thought about future, it's happening right now. So this is the difference, that in the normal life we think of a flow of time, on the Paramattha level, the time still exists, but on the spot, the eternal presence. There is still arising and passing away, but there is not this flow of time. Another one. From the worldly perspective, people are born from the mother's womb. From the Paramattha perspectives, beings are born from their karma. Karma is the real womb from which people are born. Kamma Yoni. Majjhima Nikaya 135. Another one. Human neuroscience still maintains that the consciousness and mind are created by the body, by the brain and the neurons. On the Paramattha level of practice, it becomes clear that the body with the brain is actually created by the mind. Another one. From the worldly perspective, the world is everywhere around us, and we are part of it. From the Paramattha perspective, the world is created by the mind, in the mind. In the Rohitassa Sutta I was reading, the Buddha reveals that the world is in this fathom long body. Actually, this vision I created for myself, a whole table as an explanation I wrote to that, different intensities of reality. The first conventional reality, spiritual mystical reality, which is certainly more real. You know, people who died in the near-death experiences, the people say that the reality they were emerging in is more real than the worldly one. So this is the second, this mystical transcendent reality. The third is ultimate, Paramattha, and the fourth is the absolute, Nibbana. Please do not take this table too seriously. It's my attempt to show that our everyday reality is in fact a highly selective and distorted interpretation of a sliver of a real reality, which is quite dissimilar in character and nature. Therefore, I regard our human world to be just a periphery of reality. Some would even speak of collective controlled hallucination. The Buddha's teaching leads us to awaken from this samsaric endless dream. The Buddha's main medicine is to see things as they truly are. In that sense, Buddha's path toward liberation from dukkha, from unhappiness and suffering, can be understood as healing by truth. You know, Paramattha, seeing as the things as they are, you don't attach to them so intensively as people normally do. And this detachment is making the opening possible towards realization of Nibbana. Now, conclusion. What can we learn from all this? Not the 5 khandhas go to buy 2 liters of milk in the store, but Peter Siegel. Just as the car accident was not caused by the 5 aggregates, but by Sandra Higgins. Nama Rupa bears no responsibility for the rearing of the child, but the Kerrigan's parents, they do. From the worldly ordinary perspective, there is me, there is self and mine. There is someone who has duty and responsibility for himself and towards others. In the suttas we see that Buddha used and represented the conventional reality, sometimes silently, sometimes quite explicitly. And then there is a higher reality, not distorted by the appearance of things, where there is the burden of 5 khandhas without any real self or me, where there is only an array of conditioned phenomena, factors and functions manifesting in subtle awareness. We can say that these both levels of Dhamma are very important, but the first one should lead to the second one. Let us look at the notoriously asked question: who will be reborn if there is no self? I got this question at least 20 times already. It is a brilliant example of the confusion coming from a mix of the two different levels of truth. The first part, who will be reborn, is the worldly level of language, assuming some usual self. The part, if there is no self, is the Paramatta level. Therefore, any direct answer such as somebody will be reborn or nobody will be reborn cannot be correct, because the question itself is not correct. But on one occasion, Buddha gave a worldly level of answer. Not the same person, but not completely different person will be reborn. From the Paramatta point of understanding, only the stream of cause and effect continue to roll. What continues after death of the body is only the unresolved karmic potential and the resulting stream of consciousness, not somebody, not self, not me. For me personally, the clear distinction between Sammuti and Paramatta helped me not only to believe in Buddha's doctrine, but also to understand it in its wholeness. So this, as I said, this is one element which came later to the Theravada teaching. In the Abhinamata Sangha, to my feeling, it is really overdone. Just a list of chittas, list of cetasikas, list of rupa, a catalogue of component parts which creates experience of the being, life experience of the being. I don't think it's really necessary to know all these things. That the liberating insight can come even just by natural penetration of the apparent reality, and to touch the gate towards liberation. So, be it so, can we practice intensively enough to touch at least the lowest part of the enlightenment and liberation, because the Sotapanna is already predestined for final liberation, and even people in the lay life can do it. So this should be kind of inspiration for intensive practice.